We need to address the issue of data.
Data.
So we need more data in Africa.
Good quality data.
Welcome, everyone. Today, we're talking about the promotion of artificial intelligence, AI for good, in the Global South. And we have Professor Beatrice Usaniche. We have Dr. Alexandra Garcia. We have Professor Gloria Emezue. And last but not least, we have Chebet Koros. Women of the Global South. So I tried this question into ChatGPT, and this is the answer I got. Obviously, there's a big blockage on accurate sources for AI about Africa. Do we want the big tech around the world that is driving AI today to have the most up-to-date, the most accurate information about health and education and global problems in the Global South? Maybe we want African AI to have answers to these questions. And maybe that will be the subject of what we're going to talk about today with our panel. So I want to play for you a short video.
Dataset we used is one known as JW300 from texts that are published by Jehovah's Witness.
If you looked at the website, they really laid it out that they do not allow text data mining.
Jehovah's Witness declined. So the models still exist, they're still published, but then there's now a gap in the community because it's not as easy for very new researchers to plug into the work.
How are you going to find examples of people talking or interacting about the health system in such a way that you've got that text in the way that they would actually converse and then being able to respond with information that's actually relevant to them?
I'm Dr. Victor.
I'm checking the oxygen.
The ultrasound.
We have a national broadcaster in South Africa, the SABC. They have a lot of medical actuality shows. For us, that's a great source because it's a natural speech. We're still trying to have conversation with SABC about making their content archives much easier accessible for researchers.
Two examples where in Africa you have practitioners of AI trying to get AI going and questioning whether they can access data sets.
The copyright notice for the JW300 dataset is care of USA, which means that fair use exceptions would apply. In Kenya, we have an exception for fair dealing, which is closed, which means that it allows only specific uses as an exception. And scientific research falls under those exceptions. However, the question is, does TDM fall under scientific research? So that there is uncertainty in the law because we do not know whether TDM would fall under scientific research or even fair use.
You've been working on a license for creators to make work available for AI training, amongst other purposes, in Africa, but not elsewhere. Tell us a bit about that.
This was a collaboration between CPIT's director, Dr. Melissa Omino, and the University of Pretoria in South Africa, Dr. Chijioke Okorie. from the data science law lab. They came up with an alternative open licensing model called Noodle for short. It's trying to come up with a solution where looking at the African users of an open data license and the non-African users and ensuring that there's equity in the sense of access. So in this case, African users would have broad access to the data, whereas users outside of Africa would have to provide some form of benefit for access to that data.
So I think that's a first to have a license that says we're creators, we are feeding AI or research systems, and if you're in Africa, you can use our stuff. If you're outside of Africa, you'd have to come and talk to us.
We saw the whole idea of exploitation of data as something of a mindset. When you're out to mine something, you're actually exploiting that thing. So whether it's human language or minerals and resources, the same problem exists. Let's have a new approach, which we call data farming. We are going to look for data, curate this data, working with language owners, but we bring them on board. So we bring them in and form an online community. And then when we finish the creation of data, we were able to get a license that enabled us to ensure that if you are using a data set for research, it is free. But if you are using it for commercial purposes, then you come to have a partnership agreement with us so that you donate some money, which will go back to this same community for them to create more data, because we need more data in Africa. We're able to give back to the community. We're also able to give back to the data sets by ensuring that it keeps growing.
Models like ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude that we all use don't represent Latin American culture as we want it to, because when we ask questions about our culture, it's not well represented. So we are talking with the government, with institutions on the different countries that form part of Latin America, asking for permission, doing strategic alliances. We went a step further to search every link or URL to do web scraping and check the license, even ask for explicit permission to the owners of this link. Our main goal is a better AI.
You need to be doing it yourselves in Latin America because you're part of the culture and you understand the culture. And the difference between the existing AI is that you want to have partnerships, you want to have agreements with those who are creating the data.
I think the main thing is somehow change the narrative regarding AI, because the current narrative makes us feel that the only possible AI is the one that is being done by the 5 or 10 big tech corporations that we all know. And that reflects a very predatory form of getting data. There are a lot of projects of AI that are smaller, that are more efficient, that are possible, and that reflect cultural diversity. And at this table, we have just a few of them. The problem we are facing is that the uncertainty regarding copyright rules is somehow blocking our capacity to move faster. We know that text and data mining is not allowed in most of our regulations. But the other thing we are facing is that we know in the US, the big companies have enough money to afford the uncertainty. So they are ready to do the monetary arrangements that it would take in case they lose the cases. But that's a luxury we cannot have in Latin America. So we need to have this certainty by having flexibilities, by having the legal certainty that we can do AI from the South. Because if we don't have, the only AI that will remain will be that AI that is predatory, managed by the 4 or 5 or 10 big tech.
How do you make sure that the creators in the Global South are not having their works exploited for purposes that might be piracy, substitution in the market, mimicry, all of that, while still ensuring that the cases that, Chebet and Gloria and Alexandra are working on have some data?
Thank you, Ben. Well, I don't have the answer. I think no one has the answer. One big problem here is the concentration of AI. Because if you ask anything to ChatGPT, you get an answer that comes from a man from the north. So that doesn't reflect the global south at all.
Carolina from Brazil. Brazil passed a pioneering law recently which said that creators must always be remunerated except for certain very specific cases. So maybe we should talk a little bit more about that.
As government, what we see as possible to do in Brazil is to have a bill that can address the big problem from the big stakeholders that we have right now, that is the creative sector. The big companies, the big techs, are stealing their work. They're not paying their creators. They're not paying any data at all since forever, 20 years already. So what we are doing now is trying to protect them. We know the scientific is always an exception in our copyright laws. So that's our background on building the law.
I think you have exactly the right perspective on what is happening with the big tech. For the generative AI, especially music and images and arts and language models, but it's impacting many other sectors. For example, in the programmers field, something that before took 10 programmers now can be done in 8 hours by one programmer with the support of one of these. These guys, these people will no longer have a job in the future. So it is a really strong impact in society. And I think this issue of making them pay should be our main goal.
But what if they are using AI to actually produce better works, faster works than what they are doing? So there's these nuances in this conversation, which I think we might have to really look at. And I think that's what makes the field of AI very, very complex.
Instead of just thinking that everyone sort of draws a moat around their own data and hopes everyone else does the same thing, a bit more attention to the control of anti-competitive practices, things that you do to deal with monopoly power, and some of the doctrines like essential facilities on the data and things like that, like the new European regulation published in March of this year, which is on data spaces for health, is a quite different approach that people probably need to take a look at.
So let's put at one end of the spectrum research going on in the global south using computational methodologies. That's AI. We want to promote it. Right at the other end of the spectrum is generative AI using cultural works aimed at making money by substituting for the original cultural work. So somehow in between, we need discriminating factors. Maybe these are some of the discriminating factors. What type of work is going into the AI? Is this research that is going to help us deal with the next pandemic? It's scientific. Or is it a cultural expression which arguably could be going out for entertainment purposes and competing with other entertainment? Secondly, is it a research institution in the global south, or is it the predatory global north, big tech, making money out of data extracted from the global south? Thirdly, what's the purpose? Are we trying to generate new research outputs, or are we trying to come up with a new best-selling song to compete in the market? And then if we're going to be discussing AI regulation and the rights that people have, the copyrights or the moral rights or others, we need to keep an eye on what that right is. So that's not the answer, but it's a shopping list of ways we might think about AI regulation.
It's a race. It's a race. AI now, it's a race, international race. And unfortunately, whoever has the money is winning.
I suppose the only other option is change the rules of the race. We still have to have some optimism about setting new rules. Brazil, I think, is leading the way.
It's a race, but it's not depending only on the amount of data. It also depends on the quality of the data. We have good examples as Mixtral in Europe. So they did a small model, but they invested in good quality data, and they are doing great stuff. So why we in Latin America can do the same?
I think there is already a winner of this race, and it's not the US, it's China. You see how many patents they have on these technologies. It's not only these 4 topics that Ben brought us for the debate, but also the openness of the model. Don't be misguided by this fancy name OpenAI, because it's not open at all. But there are models that are really open, and those are the models that we could learn from, implement, run in our places, so we can collaborate from the global south. We need to have the security that these kind of projects like LATAM GPT and all the projects Masakane in Africa, that they will not collapse under copyright laws that prevent us from doing what the global north has already done. That's it.